Ambedkar's view on state socialism as a feature of welfare state. Unfortunately, democracy could give effect only to the doctrine of one man, one value so far as the political structure is concerned. It has left the economic structure intact and allowed market forces to mold it. It was equally essential to prescribe the shape and form of the economic structure of society, if democracy was to live up to its principle of one man, one value. Ambedkar made an attempt to define by the law or constitutional framework both the economic structure as well as the political structure of society. Ambedkar pointed out that in the West, parliamentary democracy took no notice of economic inequalities and didn't care to examine the result of freedom of contract on the parties to the contract, in spite of the fact that they were unequal in their bargaining power. Ambedkar considered state socialism, which treats everybody equally, ensures fundamental rights, and safeguards the weak and vulnerable groups, as another important dimension of social democracy. State socialism is a regulative principle of the nation's economy. The state has to plan the economic life of people on lines that would lead to the highest point of productivity without closing every avenue to private enterprise, and also provide for equitable distribution of wealth. The plan proposes state ownership in agriculture with a collectivized method of cultivation and a modified form of socialism in the field of industry. It places squarely on the shoulders of the state the obligation to supply the capital necessary for agriculture as well as for industry. Ambedkar considers state socialism essential for economy and for India's rapid industrialization. Private enterprise cannot do it, and if it did it would produce those inequalities of wealth which private capitalism has produced in Europe and which should be a warning to Indians. Ambedkar maintains that state socialism has to be established by the law of the Constitution and thus makes it unalterable by any act of legislature or executive. Ambedkar attempts to establish state socialism without abrogating parliamentary democracy and without leaving its establishment to the will of a parliamentary democracy. According to the classical liberal position, liberty remains where the state refrains social democracy from intervention. Ambedkar differs with this and poses a question that, to whom and for whom is this liberty? Obviously this liberty is the liberty of landlords to increase rents, of capitalists to increase hours of work and reduce rates of wages. In other words, what is called liberty from the control of the state is another name for the dictatorship of the private employer. Economic dependence has other consequences also besides the condition of poverty and degradation which proceeds from it. The Hindu has a code of life, which is part of his religion. The code of life gives him many privileges and heaps upon the untouchable many indignities that are incompatible with dignity and sanctity of human life. For the development of an individual, economic opportunities have to be provided and the state has to play a role in this regard. Ambedkar's state socialism is a way out of capitalism and Brahmanism. He firmly believed that freedom of the individual is possible only under parliamentary democracy and not under dictatorship of any kind.